Welcome to the Black Bibliophile. This is a podcast hosted by me, Jazz. Let's start off with you can follow me on Twitter at the Black Bibliophile, and you can also send me any questions, book ideas, books to review, zines, comic books, any your thoughts, whatever you want to send me. You can send that to the Black Bibliophile at gmail.com. And a little bit about me. My name is Jazz. I'm a disabled Black woman who owns Visionary Comics in Riverside, California. I love to read. I love nerd shit. I play video games. I love comics. I read a ton of comics because I do own a comic book shop. And this is a podcast where I will discuss and review comics, books, zines, and whatever else I read. It's a straightforward, no-nonsense look into popular text, and basically, I read books and talk shit about them. Sometimes it's good shit, sometimes it's not so much good shit. It's my thoughts, these are my thoughts, and so I just, thought, hey, I could share them. So check me out on social media, and this is the Black Bibliophile, first episode, so let's dive in. Welcome back to the Black Bibliophile podcast. This is our first episode, hosted by me, Jazz. You can follow the Black Bibliophile on Twitter at the Black Bibliophile. I'm just an avid reader, nerd, and I'm here to talk to you about books. So, let's get into it. Let's talk about it. This show is going to be sectioned off in different segments, of course. We're going to start off with the author spotlight. The author spotlight is basically just me making you aware of authors that not many people read or know about, or maybe you do know about and need to be reminded of, to pick up their books, check it out, whatever. It's basically the author spotlight is going to be an author that I feel like I need to share with you guys. And my first author in the author spotlight will be Nnedi Okorafor. Sorry if I'm butchering it. I'm not very great with African names. I apologize, but I believe it's Nnedi Okorafor. Nnedi Okorafor is an award-winning novelist. She writes a lot of African-based science fiction, fantasy, and magical realism for both children and adults. She's won a Nebula Award and a Hugo Award for her work on the novella Binti, which is an amazing, amazing book, which everyone should check out. Run and go get that book. She's won Nebula Awards, Hugo Awards, and her ancestry, she is Nigerian, but she's an American-born Nigerian, born from Nigerian immigrants, and her stories, her books, her works focus on Africa. When I first read her books, it blew my fucking mind, because I come from suburbia, where I was often the only Black person in any classroom or room, period. And so all the books I read never had Black women in it or Black people in them. And my favorite genre is science fiction. And it was amazing because the future was devoid of Black people. It was like this weird, it's not weird, it's fucking white supremacy, but there are no Black people in the future. So when I discovered Nnedi Okorafor's books, it was around Christmas time. My sister was reading Akata Witch, which is a children's book written by Nnedi Okorafor. And how I always describe it, or my elevator pitch of Akata Witch for people who I want to get into her books, is it's like a African Harry Potter. It's like the best way for me to describe it. Let me look up on Wikipedia a synopsis so you guys can like understand really well what this book is about. So this synopsis is via Wikipedia, and it's Akata Witch is about a 12-year-old named Sunny who was born in America yet lives in Nigeria. She is black and albino. She is a great athlete, yet she can't go in the sun to play soccer. Sunny then discovers she is a so-called free agent with magical powers. Soon she's a part of a quartet of magic students trying to capture a career criminal who also knows magic. Like, that's like the shittiest fucking description of the book. It gives it no justice. The magical realism, the Afrofuturism, it's like amazing. And that's like the first book I read from her. And it just opened my mind to what science fiction could be, what fantasy could be. And I was stunned. So then from there, I dove in to another one of her books. It was a couple years later because, funds are tight. And I can't just go out and buy all these amazing books all the time. So it was like a year or two later on my birthday, I received Lagoon, which is another amazing book. And it takes place in Lagos, Nigeria, the big city in Nigeria. And it's I can't. Lagoon is amazing. It's more of an adult book, so I don't recommend this for younger children. But it's about these people in Nigeria. It's about these, I want to say 4 people, 3 or 4 people. I'm going to go with 4 people in Nigeria because some characters come in and come out. Like, it's basically an invasion story, an alien invasion story. So these creatures who crashed in Lagos, in the harbor, or like, it's not a lagoon, but you know what I mean, like the harbor area, the Cape, or in Lagos, and they're coming to speak to the people, with the human race. And it's basically an invasion story that starts off peaceful, but it comments on humanity, tensions in Africa, and the governments within Nigeria, and race. It's just amazing. And I feel like, domestic abuse, the whole spectrum, marriage, children, having a career, being a black woman with a great career, trying to balance family lives and the traditional ideas of how being a wife and mother and a career woman, and how the traditional ideas try to interfere with that and conflict. It's a really great book with all these humanistic traits inside of a science fiction alien invasion story. It's amazing. It's amazing. Go fucking buy it, read it, tell everyone about it. The book that changed my life, though, the reason why she is my first author spotlight, is Who Fears Death. This book was, like, I think her first full-length novel, and it's insane. Like, it's a post-apocalyptic sci-fi fantasy story about a girl named Onisanwu, which is Igbo for who fears death. And I love Nnedi's books because most of her stories focus on black women. Like, they're the heroes, they're the protagonists in the story, which you rarely see in any sci-fi or fantasy fic or story or book. So I'm going to find another weak-ass synopsis on Wikipedia. I probably could delve into the internet or like something, but if I read the back of the books, it's just critical acclaim, so I can't give you like what's on the back of the book. But here's the synopsis on Wikipedia. The novel takes place in a fictionalized post-apocalyptic future version of the Sudan, where the light-skinned Naru oppress the dark-skinned Okiki. The protagonist, Onisanwu, is an Iwu, i.e., child of an Okiki woman raped by a Naru, reaching maturity. She goes on a quest to defeat her sorceress father, Daineb, using her magical powers. Like that, once again, is a weak ass review of an amazing book. I'm going to stop right here real quick, though, to give you a trigger warning about this book. This book is heavily, like, there's so much conversations on rape and depictions of rape. And it gets to a point where it is kind of uncomfortable because the rape of her mother and her rape is her conception story. So, and the rape is so important to the story that it is brought up graphically 3 or 4 times within the book. So it is a major trigger warning for anybody who has issues with rape or sexual abuse or sexual assault. Because I know that with my personal history with sexual assault, I had a hard time getting through that story. So I just want to warn people that Who Fears Death heavily delves into that subject, and you should be very aware that that's a thing in this book. But the book alone is amazing because it depicts black female friendships, portrays Onyi Sanwoo as a flawed character. Like, it's not just like, oh, she's the hero of the story and she's gonna save the world or whatever. She's like the most flawed, fucked up teenager. It's a very interesting coming of age story of how she deals with the discrimination she faces, the situation in which she was born, the task that she has to set out to do, and how she deals with all these things and dealing with love and friendship, traditions within the Okiki people. Like, it's an amazing book, and it's unflinching look at all these topics. And I really suggest you read this because not only is the human relationships and the human themes of this book really interesting, just the sci-fi themes and the magic and the realism and the fantasy. It's amazing. It's amazing. And it's a reason why I chose Nnedi Okorafor as my first author spotlight. Like, you totally have to read this book. Her new book, Binti Home, just came out, which is a sequel to Binti, the book I previously mentioned that she won the Hugo and Nebula Award, came out. It's amazing. Read that too. Read all of her books. The Book of Phoenix is a prequel to Who Fears Death. Read it. I'm going to leave a list and a description of all the books I've mentioned. Fuck with it. Nnedi Okorafor, my first author spotlight. She's amazing, and she brings black women into the forefront of science fiction, which I truly appreciate. So go out there and check out Nnedi Okorafor's book. All right, so second segment of the Black Bibliophile podcast. This is the book review section. This is where I go in and review one book, do an in-depth review of one book, graphic novel, comic, zine, whatever. It's the focus of today's episode. And yeah, so my first book that I'd love to review on this beautiful podcast is the graphic novel adaptation of Octavia Butler's Kindred by Damian Duffy and John Jennings. Damian Duffy is the writer of the graphic novel, the writer and adapter. So I wouldn't say writer because Octavia Butler wrote the original text of Kindred, but he adapted her text into the graphic novel. And John Jennings is the artist who adapted her words into, this beautiful piece of work in front of me. So I came across this book like I said earlier in the podcast, that I own a comic book shop, Visionary Comics, downtown Riverside, shameless plug. And I was ordering books for my comic shop, and I was looking through the previews catalog, doing what you do, and I saw like a full page ad of Octavia Butler's Kindred. Like there's like new adaptation from Abram Arts Books Publishing. And I was like, holy shit. So I ordered like 3, 4, 10 for the store. And I was like, I'm going to steal one of these. I'm going to read one of these. I can't wait. Octavia Butler, for real, is a homie. If you don't know about Octavia Butler, you need to know. Like, she passed away, unfortunately. She was one of the first, I think, Black women to be recognized for science fiction. Like, she wrote Parable of Talents, Parable of Sower, Bloodchild, and that's like a short story compendium, which you should totally read. Bloodchild, it's amazing. Fledgling, which is her vampire story, which she never got to finish because it was supposed to be a trilogy, and then she died of, unfortunately. So that never got to be finished, but it's amazing. And a plethora of other books that I recommend you go check out. Octavia Butler is the shit. And if you want some awesome science fiction shit, like just with Black people, go. Because I swear to you, Octavia is amazing. So Kindred, though. Kindred is like one of her most popular books. And I'll give you a synopsis of the books after I run down like the authors of the adaptation. So Damian Duffy is a cartoonist, scholar, and writer. I got this info off of his website, by the way, damianduffy.net. He's a cartoonist, scholar, writer, curator, lecturer, teacher, and Glyphs Comics Award-winning New York Times best-selling graphic novelist. He holds an MS and PhD in Library and Informational Sciences from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. So, yeah. And then John Jennings is a professor of media. John Jennings is the artist, is a professor of media and cultural studies and cooperative faculty member in the Department of Creative Writing at the University of California, Riverside. Woo, that was a long sentence. His work centers around intersectional narratives regarding identity politics and popular media. Jennings is a co-creator of Eisner Award-winning essay collection, The Blacker the Ink, Constructions of Black Identity in Comics and Sequential Art, and co-founder/organizer of the Schoenberg Center's Black Comic Book Festival in Harlem, New York, of course. He is co-founder and organizer of the MLK NorCal's Black Comic Arts Festival in San Francisco, and also SoulCon, the Brown and Black Comics Expo at the Ohio State University. Jennings sits on the editorial advisory boards for the Black Scholar and the New Ohio State Press imprint, New Sons, Race, Gender, and Sexuality in the Speculative. He is currently the Nasir Jones Hip Hop Fellow at the Hutchinson Center at Harvard University. So these two wonderful people came together to write and adapt, not write, I keep saying right, but came together to adapt Octavia Butler's novel, Kindred. I actually interviewed the both of them for Black Girl Nerds. You can check that out on BGN. Just type in Kindred, John Jennings, just keywords, and you'll be able to find the article on that and the interview, delving into their thoughts and ideas and what they felt going into adapting this piece. So that's a really interesting read. I loved interviewing them. But let's get to the book. Let's get to what this review is about. So Kindred is about a Black woman in the 1970s being magically transported to 18th century South, American South, and her having to deal with that. Like, it's already a stressful situation. a modern black woman being transported into slavery times is like the most stressful fucking plot thing I could ever think of, and that's what makes it good. In Octavia Butler's novel, what's interesting, which you don't get in the graphic novel because it's a visual medium, so you immediately can tell. But in the novel, you didn't know she was black until she got there. Like, you didn't know she was black until she encountered the white people in the slave owning South. So it was like a mini twist within the book that just got you all fucked up because you're like, oh no, oh God, oh Jesus, like whatever. So in this novel, it's obviously apparent that she's black because it's a comic book. The art, it's a graphic novel, so you see everything, but it still doesn't take away from the immediate stress you feel while you're reading this graphic novel. I want to say from reading both the novel and the graphic novel, this adaptation is amazing. They captured the important themes and thoughts and ideas that Butler put into her novel, and I believe the art enhances her words. So John Jennings' work on the art with its vivid colors and the sketchiness of the outlines capture the movement, because this adaptation is actually pretty quick moving. It captures the movement and the stress, and it's all there. It's all there in color, and boy, is it stressful. So not only is the main character transferred the main character's name is Dana, is transferred into slave owning South, 18th century American South. She is transported here. I don't think I'm going to have any spoilers of the story because for people who haven't read the novel, I don't want to ruin it, but this story has a lot to do with family, of course, race, interracial relationships. Like, it just runs the gambit of all of that. And then history, how slavery is still impacting the lives of black people today, how a modern woman can step back in the slavery times, and then she's in the South, 18th century South, and then she's immediately swooped back into modern 1970s, which, I mean, 1970s wasn't a great year for black people either. Like, what year is a great year for black people? But that's another conversation for another time. But she gets pulled back into the modern times, and it's just like the trauma, and I don't know, it's a great allegory, I guess, for the trauma that black people still carry today. Whether it's not that we personally are being transported back there, but the trauma our ancestors went through in the South during slavery affects us every day. And it's something that we all live with constantly. And I don't know, I feel like the book captured that so perfectly by her going back and forth through time. Just like, she's so traumatized and so fucked up. Obviously, she's traumatized. She literally gets whipped in one of the scenes for trying to teach kids how to read. She's trying to teach the other children born into slavery to read, and she gets caught, and they beat the shit out of her. Like, it's awful. It's fucking awful. It's fucking awful. Like, it's a lot for me to read it because it's so hard to talk about this book. It's a beautiful, okay, let's reel it in. It's beautifully drawn, beautifully adapted. It captures all the emotional labor and like of the character, because she's married to a white man. And it also shows, okay, let me get all my thoughts in order. Like, I have notes, obviously, but like talking about this book stirs up so many emotions within myself that I just have a hard time getting out what I'm trying to say. So, Dana, the main character, is married to a white man. She is transported to the South the first time without him. And she has to go through it. She's struggling. She's trying to get out. She finds this little white boy who's drowning. She saves the little white boy and she's trying to give him CPR. And when she looks up, the mom is coming, trying to, like, what are you doing to my child? Blah, 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 like yelling. And she saves the little boy. But after she saves the little boy's dad, who's white, everybody's white, points a rifle at her because he thinks she did it. And then she snapped back into the 1970s to her white husband. And when it happens again, he happens to come with her. And it's interesting to see how their relationship is influenced by this new surroundings, this new consequence, these new societal, like, she's black, he's white. He's talking about how she's like his, like, that's his slave or whatever, like, so they can make it through together. It's weird, interesting, uncomfortable. Like, it has these uncomfortable conversations about race and interracial dating and how susceptible white people can be to white supremacy. That's kind of what it is. Like, it's an interesting read, and I could talk about it forever. And I think everybody should read it. The art is gorgeous. The adaptation is smart, and they pull out just the right scenes to make it so it's a great read. And honestly, I believe these two should adapt all of Octavia Butler's work because it was a very thoughtful and beautiful tribute to her original book. And I suggest you all go out to your local comic book shop, local bookshop, and pick this book up because it's amazing. And it also made it before, they took down the New York Times best-selling graphic novels list, before they got rid of that. The last book to hit #1 was this adaptation of Octavia Butler's Kindred. So, it's amazing. I can't keep it on the shelves at my store. So, go out, read it, love it, be about it, support black artists, black stories. Fucking do it. All right, so on to our next segment. This is called A Brief Moment in Comics. A Brief Moment in Comics. So this is where I go over comic books that caught my attention or something that I've been reading in comics. Being as I own a comic book shop, I do read a lot, like a ton of comics. So I thought, hey, let's have a cool segment on here where I talk about something comic related, not like something, but just specifically comics. So, and this is single issue, weekly, bi-weekly books that come out that you can pick up at your local comic book shop. Support your local comic book shop, support your local businesses, support small businesses, give them all your coin because it is not easy. So yeah, the first comic books in this brief moment in comics that I want to bring up is not like something I'm a huge fan of, but I just wanted to talk about it because it was like a big deal for 5 seconds. So Batman 21 and 22 and The Flash 21, 22 and the new DC Rebirth landscape. It's the Button arc, which is let me give you, because this arc is important to the overall DC Rebirth landscape. So in May of 2016, DC Comics launched DC Rebirth, which is their latest rebirth, which is the latest reboot. See, all these rewords are fucking me up. Which is the latest reboot of the DC Comics landscape after the New 52. The New 52 was people hated it. There's a couple things people like, but overall, a lot of people didn't like the way DC Comics just destroyed pre-New 52 continuity and brought in a new, younger Superman. They brought in Black Wally West. They they got rid of Nightwing, and then it was just Dick Grayson was a spy for a while. That was interesting. Grayson wasn't that bad. I kind of liked it. Whatever. So, people basically overall, the consensus was, nah, fuck that shit. DC New 52 was garbage. So DC decided, all right, fine. So they rebooted in May of last year, they rebooted the whole DC landscape and brought back the pre-New 52 continuity. So when bringing back the pre-New 52 continuity, they were like, how do we explain where all these people have been? How do we explain the missing years or whatever? So it starts off with the Flash in the DC Rebirth comic. It's the first one to release and has a Flash on the cover, not the Flash, but it has pre-New 52 Wally West, the white one, reaching out, in the Speed Force, and he's trying to reach out to be remembered because he's been lost in the Speed Force for all these years. Nobody remembers Wally West, pre-New 52 Wally West, and then Barry Allen happens to remember him, and that pulls him out of the Speed Force and brings him back into the physical world. So with pre-New 52 Wally West coming back, everybody starts getting their memories of all this stuff they forgot, all these things they lost. New 52 Superman dies, and pre-New 52 Superman comes in. He's been there the whole time. His name is Clark White. He lives a double life. He's been hiding, watching. He came into this world after I think it was Crisis on Infinite Earth. Do not quote me on this. I'm sorry if I don't know the specific event where Clark White, pre-New 52 Superman, got stuck on Earth. So I'm sorry. Let me just preface that. So he got stuck on Earth somehow. Maybe it was Crisis on Infinite Earths. Probably not. I don't know. And he saw that there was already a Superman there, so he was just living his life with Lois, a different Lois Lane from his continuity, and they had a kid and whatever, living their life. But then pre-New 52 Superman died, so that Superman, old school Superman, was like, I'm gonna step up and take the cowl, whatever, and take the mantle of Superman in this world and do my thing. So all of this is happening. People are starting to remember, oh, we've just lost a lot of years. What the fuck happened? How did we lose all these years? What happened? Where are all these years have gone? And Batman, being the detective genius that he is, finds the button, which is the comedian's button from Watchmen. If you haven't read Watchmen, it's that happy face button, the yellow happy face button with the drip of red blood on it. He finds that, and nobody knows where it's from, but it's a clue as to where all those years came from, why the DC Rebirth is the DC Rebirth. So yeah, that's the clue we're given in the beginning of in May of 2016. That's the thing we were given. So recently, in May of 2017, which is interesting, I didn't think about that, it's a full year later, we're given Batman 21, Batman 22, Flash 21, Flash 22, which is the Button arc, where Batman and the Flash start investigating the Button, the actual Watchmen comedian, not Watchmen button. I like to call it the Watchmen button because it's the big logo for Watchmen, but it's the comedian's button from Watchmen. And they're investigating it. Like Batman, some weird fucking happens in the Batcave, and all of a sudden the Reverse Flash is there because he's been running through time, and he's talking about how he met God and he knows everything and blah blah blah. And he's beating the shit out of Batman in the Batcave. And Batman, before all this started happening, called the Flash because he was like, "Oh, something's weird is happening with the button." Once again, if y'all want like real detailed reviews of these books, you're gonna have to go somewhere else. I highly recommend Comics Explained on YouTube. It's run by a black YouTuber, and he does amazing breakdowns of comic books, Marvel and DC. So if you want amazing, impeccable reviews of comic books, I would go there. This is just me talking about a comic book and how I feel about it. If you don't like it, I just directed you where you could go so you can get more information. But basically, he calls the Flash before the Reverse Flash shows up and is like, "Hey, this button's acting weird and shit. You should get down here." And the Flash is like, "Oh, I'm busy. Can you give me a minute? I'll be there in like literally 1 minute." And Batman's like, "Cool, whatever, nigga. I'll be here." So he hangs up, and then the Flash is off doing his thing. Then all of a sudden in the Batcave, Reverse Flash shows up and is like, pontificating, doing his fucking villain thing, monologuing, and beating Batman's ass. And the coolest part about this book, like the only thing I like about this book, this is Batman 21, is this fight scene, because it's all over a span of a minute, this whole fight scene. He is running back and forth, beating his ass, and in the corner, it's like counting down the minutes, and like Batman's trying to drag it out so he doesn't die. So the Reverse Flash doesn't kill him, and the Reverse Flash is like, "I've seen God and this and blah, 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 blah." And the Reverse Flash showed up because Batman touched the actual physical comedian's button. And so they're fighting. Batman's like, "What the fuck's going on? Oh my God." He's just coming through time and talking about meeting Jesus and getting his ass beat, getting his ass beat, getting his ass beat. And like a second before that, there's this blue shining light in the Batcave, and Reverse Flash is literally vaporized to bones. And then the Flash shows up and is like, "Sorry, Bruce, that took me a minute. What's up?" And then Bruce is in the corner bleeding. Reverse Flash is on the floor, bag of bones. And the whole Batcave's all fucked up. That was like the coolest fight scene in that book, the coolest scene in that book. My problem with the button arc is a lot happens, but it means absolutely fucking nothing because they didn't tell you. Okay, because they're hinting at who changed the whole continuity of the DC universe, and we all fucking know in the Watchmen who has that power, and it would be Dr. Manhattan. I don't think I'm wrong thinking it's Dr. Manhattan, especially with the vaporizing of the bones and the blue light. Like, who the hell else is blue? Exactly, it's Dr. Manhattan. He fucking did it. But like nobody wants to say it. So anyways, like the next book is The Flash 21, and that's like Barry trying to figure out why the Reverse Flash was there, what the fuck's going on. He's talking about time travel, so they get on the what is it, like the cosmic fucking the cosmic treadmill. And the thing is, it's the DC Rebirth is putting the DC universe back into form to the Flashpoint days. If you don't know about what, that doesn't make any sense. If you don't know about Flashpoint, that fucking story, I suggest you could go on Netflix and watch the Flashpoint animated movie. That one's really great. If you don't want to read a book, or you can go to your local comic book shop and pick up the trade paperback of Flashpoint, the Flashpoint Paradox. It's fucking amazing. But basically, this DC Rebirth is after the Flashpoint Paradox. So this happened in this universe now. So anyways, Flash 22, he's going to go back in time, do the thing, try to figure out clues as to why Ichabod Crane or the Reverse Flash came through and was like, "Oi, I saw God. I'm amazing. I'm a win. I'm a wreck this shit. So he wants to know what even is that. So Batman's all fucked up. He's like, yo, Bruce, stay here. I'm gonna go figure it out. He goes to the watchtower and they have a storage room full of all the shit they confiscate from cosmic evil people or whatever. And the cosmic treadmill is there, which I think is really weird. I'm not like deeply into Flash mythos or DC shit, but the cosmic treadmill was just like a weird like Deus Ex Machina kind of thing where it was just like, you need to go back in time. Here's a treadmill that you can ride, which is really funny to me. That's powered by running in the Speed Force, and you can ride this through time and steer it wherever time period you want to go. That shit, in my head, the logistics of that doesn't make sense. But I digress. So, anyways, he gets on this he's about to take off on this cosmic treadmill to figure out where the fuck Ichabod Crane came from and what the disturbance in the Speed Force is. And Batman limps his sad ass over and is like, I'm coming with you because I'm Batman, justice, sadness, all that stuff. And he's like, fine. And he attaches like a thing to the treadmill so he too can travel through time. And then they go off through time and end up in the Flashpoint universe, which shouldn't even exist, which should be gone. And like the Flash is freaking out and they end up in the Batcave in the Flashpoint universe, standing next to Thomas Wayne. Thomas Wayne Batman, spoiler alerts for those of you who haven't read Flashpoint. For those of you who haven't read The Button, you probably should have stopped listening to this before. I'm sorry I didn't give you an earlier spoiler alert. I'm sure you're already gone, but spoiler alert. And then Batman, Bruce Wayne, Mr. I'm an orphan, my parents got shot in an alley, freaks the fuck out because he's like, oh my God, it's my dad. And his dad's like, oh my God, it's my son, because Bruce died in the Flashpoint universe. So, like, it's really hard to talk about these books if you haven't read Flashpoint, but the thing is, like, the time. So the Flash goes back in time in Flashpoint Paradox and saves his mother from being killed from the Reverse Flash. This in turn sets off a whole bunch of events and changes all of time. So instead of Bruce's parents being gunned down after the opera in the alley, it was Bruce who was gunned down. And that inspires Thomas Wayne to become Batman, and that makes Martha Wayne insane, and she becomes the Joker. So that's that. And Wonder Woman and Aquaman are fighting a giant war because she basically beheaded his wife. Spoiler alerts, all this shit. If you're really interested, you should read it. It's super dope. But so they end up in Thomas Wayne Batman's Batcave, and Bruce and Thomas are like, oh my God. And then like everything's time is collapsing. It's a really fucked up story. And in the next books, like Jay Garrett shows up. Like, I get what DC's trying to do, but a lot of nothing happens, and it's never revealed who owns the button. The whole thing's called The Button, and it's never revealed who did this fuckery to the DC universe. And it's all to be revealed at the end of the book. You find out, like, oh, check out Doomsday Clock in fucking November. This book came out in May. And they're like, oh yeah, if you want to know what happens with this, come back in November 2017 and read the Doomsday Clock. And I was like, man, fuck this. And I was agitated. So, like, what was good about it is that first fight with the Reverse Flash and Bats, that was dope. What wasn't so great, I didn't really care about Thomas Wayne Batman. I know I'm heartless. I know Bruce Wayne meeting his papa and shit. It was like a real deep moment. Maybe I'm a heartless bitch, but I didn't fucking care. Because it was like, it seemed like it was just put in there for the fanboys, like it was fan service, and it didn't really make the story or anything for me. It's like, okay. What's really not great is that next part comes out in fucking November. I was highly annoyed, and I was like, man, I ain't gonna read this shit no more. Now I gotta fucking wait all the way till November to figure out what the hell's going on. And it's a whole different thing. Somehow Superman's involved in the Doomsday Clock. So I'm like, None of this have anything to do with Superman. It was all Batman and the Flash, and now all of a sudden, Superman. Well, all right, cool. And then like nothing fucking happened, and then it was over. That's another bad thing. And then them trying to act like we all don't know Dr. Manhattan is somehow involved in this, whether or not he's like the main reason why this is all a thing leads to being in the air. But we all know he has something to do with it because it's fucking Dr. Manhattan. He's like above space and time. But whatever. That is a brief moment in comics. I hope you enjoyed it. God, fucking hated that arc. Fucking. Okay, so fourth segment of the Black Bibliophile podcast. This is what I'm going to call the zine corner. This is where I'm going to feature any zines I find or any zine related content and just feature them on the channel because I know there's a lot of zines that don't get huge play or mention on social media or anything. And I'm a huge zine fan. So yeah, I'm just going to mention a few things, talk about zine culture, all of that. So if you don't know what a zine is like a handmade comic book, text, things like that, that creators make. They're very cost effective, very affordable, like comic books, novellas, poetry. A zine could be anything. It's just a little paper book or a large paper book or like a little magazine-ish type thing that creators sell and distribute at cons, zine fest, all of these things. So I'm going to feature some of the ones I love and that I've come across lately and tell you guys about it. So I recently went to the LA Zine Fest, which was at the California Art Center in downtown Los Angeles. And that show is amazing. As a disabled woman, I've gone to a billion cons and like none of them, like most of them are not accessible for me. So I have a really, really hard time getting around cons. And I went to the LA Zine Fest and it was like the most accessible con I've ever been to. The aisles were wide. So wheelchairs, people with mobility aids like canes and walkers and crutches could get through easily without having to squeeze or like it was easy to access the content and the creators because of just the width of the aisles, which many conventions don't even think about. I know when I'm in my wheelchair at cons, it's almost impossible for me to get to certain booths or get down certain aisles because it's so packed and or the layout is just so fucked up that I can't get my chair through or my walker through. So I really appreciate that about the LA Zine Fest. Also, everything was well labeled. The elevators, escalators, everything that a person with mobility issues or disabilities that they would need, it was all visible and easy to get to, which I am here for. It was so nice to be able to walk into a space and just enjoy the festival. Like I didn't have to think about my disability and how I was going to get around this space to enjoy the con because they already thought about that for me. They were like, hey, you're disabled. How about we make this accessible to you too? Which I swear some of the biggest cons in the world, Comic-Con, WonderCon, are completely just it's like a dumpster fire for people with disabilities because the volunteers don't know where elevators are. The aisles are thin. You got to walk for like 30 miles to fucking find handicapped. Handicapped is not a great word. Disabled parking. It's called handicap parking, but should be called disabled parking. Um, like, and this place had all of those things. It was completely accessible and amazing, and I was able to enjoy the zine fest, and not have to think about how I would be able to function within that space. So I was very appreciative of that. So went to the LA Zine Fest. I want to give a shout out to the Thick Thigh Collective, which is an amazing collective of women, of Black women, who create zines and arts and content about Black women and for Black women, so, and women of color. So their zine, the Stay Mad zine, they have 1, 2, and 3. That's amazing. And they're working on Stay Mad number 4. And you can like visit them on Facebook, the Thick Thigh Collective, or you can go to their website, thickthighcollective.com, I believe. They're amazing. I got one of their zines. It was like a little zine that they were giving out for free. And it's like a very brief history of zines by the Thick Thigh Collective. And they talk about the history of zines, about how they were used as a source to get out information to people. So I can read this little tiny zine. I'll read you the very brief history of zine compiled by the Thick Thigh Collective. Throughout history, zines have played a huge role in social change. Much like today, they have been used to educate folks and spread awareness. While they weren't called zines until more recently, DIY and self-published literature can be found in several social movements throughout history. Prior to slavery being abolished, free Black folks and others who opposed slavery published abolitionist newsletters. One well-known publication is The North Star by Frederick Douglass. Considering it was illegal for Black folks to read and write at the time, publishing this newspaper was an activism on its own. During the 60s and 70s, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense spread their message by distributing pamphlets and literature. They used their newsletters to expose police brutality and inform their communities about programs like the Free Breakfast for Children, program. When Riot Grrrl erupted in the early 90s, we started to see zines about girl power and the smashing of the patriarchy. This style of zine is similar to what you see today. This isn't the only time zines and feminism cross paths. Distributing pamphlets was also a huge tool amongst the suffragettes, fighting for the right for women to vote. Well, white women. Zines and DIY have helped people live and speak freely before we even had the names for it. Speak your truth, get free, make zines. Your voice matters. The Thick Thigh Collective. And you can hit them up at the Thick Thigh Collective at gmail.com. That's their email. And yeah, hit them up if you want to contribute to any of their zines or just talk to them and tell them that they're awesome. This little, a brief history of zines that I read you is something that they were just handing out at the LA Zine Fest, and I thought it was amazing, and they're amazing. I also got a zine called Perfectly Disabled, which is amazing, and it's like a disabled pamphlet or zine. It's a zine about being disabled and not being oppressed by it, not being oppressed. It's a zine about being disabled and how it's perfectly all right to be disabled and to be proud about it. And yeah, it's amazing. And it talks about ableism and how being disabled isn't something you should be ashamed of, and how if you're not disabled, if you're an able-bodied person, how you can be an ally without being harmful or fucked up about it. Like, my least favorite thing is when people tell disabled people, I've heard this a billion times, it's like, oh, why don't you try eating this way? Or why don't you try yoga or something like that? And you're like, man, if there was a magical cure, if yoga could cure my disabilities and my ailments and my invisible illnesses, You would think I've already tried that. Like, you would think I would do anything in my power to try to feel better. So, Perfectly Disabled helps allies and disabled people come to terms with being disabled isn't really a problem. And, like, you should be proud of how you are and who you are. So, yeah, Perfectly Disabled is amazing. And I've picked up a bunch of other zines from a bunch of other creators, like Life is a Bus, Enjoy the Ride by Linda Lee, the Perfect and Cute Self Care Zine by Corey Alba, and there's just a ton more, and I can't mention them all because for this zine corner, I wanted to focus on a zine given to me by Silver Sprocket Publishing. They're self-publishing, like a small indie publisher out of San Francisco, and this zine is actually nominated this year for an Eisner Award, and it's called Your Black Friend. And I swear it's like fucking amazing. So, Your Black Friend is an open letter from your black friend to you about race, racism, friendship, and alienation. This this fucking zine though, I'm so happy Silver Sprocket sent this to me because they sent me this care package to it's like a little testing package of their zines to see what I would like to order from their publishing company to carry in my store, and I am totally going to carry this. Your Black Friend by Ben Passmore is nominated this year for an Eisner Award and is really truly deserving of that honor. It's funny and infuriating all at the same time, and it perfectly captures the microaggressions black people face every time they encounter white people. And just for me personally, it even captures like how black people interact with certain black people. There's a part like where the main character, which is your black friend, feels like even when he's talking to his black friends, he feels like he's not black enough. He's not woke enough. Like his wokeness is not there. So he's just having like a hard time with black people saying you're not black enough, why aren't you being more? And I kind of identify with that because my whole life I grew up in suburbia. I know. I grew up in suburbia, and the black people I encountered, like the people I went to high school with, or even like my cousins who live in LA, like near Compton, Inglewood, Carson, all of that, they're like constantly telling me I am not black enough. I like all that white shit, using quotations, all that white shit. Like I liked My Chemical Romance and scene music, and I read comic books, and I liked all that white shit. And I'm like, there isn't only one way to be black, and I like that this zine comments on that. Like I'll read an excerpt from Ben Passmore's Your Black Friend. It's your black friend has noticed a change in his black friends. Head wraps have replaced snapbacks and people are going by Yoruba names. Your black friends do not think he's black enough. He doesn't want to reclaim his Africanness. He doesn't like loose fabrics. He chills with too many white people. Your black friend doesn't think your black friend doesn't think that black is a performance, isn't earned through association. He believes it's an existential reality. I don't know. I think it's an interesting view on blackness and how sometimes, especially now with this new like woke generation and all this, that you feel like you have to be a certain way, you have to be a certain type of like woke and black, when just being black is a reality, like it's an everyday thing. And I identify with this because I was often told that I was not black enough, and I just like that he commented on that in the zine. And I also love that he says in the book, your black friend feels like a man without a country. For me, that like hit me right in the soft bits because I often feel like a person without a country. I often feel like America isn't here for me. And because of slavery and because my past was stolen from me, I have no idea where in Africa my ancestors were from. I have no idea. That part of my history was stolen from me by white supremacy. So I have no idea where in Africa I belong. And I know, I'm sure shit, sure, like America doesn't want me. I'm a black disabled woman. I have so many intersections that are being targeted on a daily basis that I constantly feel like a person without a country. I feel no affiliation to one thing. And I love that he also comments on that, and I can completely identify with that. So, yeah, Your Black Friend by Ben Passmore is an amazing short read about how white people and racism and black people all come to a head, and how just trying to live. It's just about trying to live, man. Just let niggas live. It's a really good zine, and I'm gonna leave. You can go on silversprocket.com to pick it up, or actually it's www.silversprocket.net. So you can probably order it from there. It's $5. It's worth it. Support black creators, support indie publishers, support zines, support creator owned literature. Fucking get on it. It's amazing. $5 is like a great price for this. It's very well made, well constructed, beautiful, colorful. The art's gorgeous book. And yeah, you guys, that's the zine corner. If you guys have any zines or anything you want me to read or check out, you guys can email me at theblackbibliophile@gmail.com. That's theblackbibliophile@gmail.com. It's spelled how it sounds. And you can leave me comments. You can email me questions. Leave me suggestions on what you want to hear me talk about, comic book wise, zine wise, book wise, whatever. You can leave any feedback. This is my first episode and this is my first podcast, so I'd love to know what you think about it. And yeah, that's the end of the Black Bibliophile. Go out there and support your local bookstores, local comic book shops, local authors, creators. Support black writers, black creators, black women especially. Go out there and read, y'all. So yeah, I'll see you guys probably This podcast is going to be a bi-weekly podcast because, it takes me a minute to read and get everything associated and plan this. So this is going to be a bi-weekly podcast. So every 2 weeks I'll be coming at you with a new episode, a new book, new stuff to talk about. Yeah. So thank you for listening to my first podcast. And yeah, this is the Black Bibliophile. This is Jazz, and yeah, I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.